Good evening, classmates. For tonight's video thread, I'm going to be talking about the evangelical right and their disillusionment with the Bush administration. The Bush administration was perceived originally by many on the right, particularly the Christian right, as being a administration that would be particularly favorable to their causes, particularly abortion and stem cell research and other social issues. Referring to Bush 43, President George W. Bush, who was elected in 2000 and again in 2004, largely with the help and support of the conservative right and the Christian right in the United States, both in both elections. President Bush was generally considered to be a born-again Christian, both professed by himself and by others on numerous occasions, and he was perceived as being generally conservative and generally in line with many of the far right on certain issues. He was certainly never self-touted as a fundamentalist or anything like that, but in general he was perceived as being fairly conservative at least in the viewpoint of those far-right Christians who helped elect him and re-elect him. But over the 2 terms of his administration, the far right became somewhat disillusioned with President Bush because he had not pushed their issues that they had hoped that he would be pushing. In particular, Bush never was able to put an outright ban on abortion. The far right had helped elect him, hoping that he would try to reverse 1973 Roe versus Wade, which essentially made abortion legal for the most part in the United States. But that was never to come to pass during the Bush administration. Bush had maintained some fairly conservative views, particularly with his veto on restrictions for the funding of stem cell research in 2006. That was actually his first veto utilized as president, 5 years into his administration, or into his he was already into his second administration rather, which was a fairly conservative viewpoint. But also several things occurred. Of course, 9/11, which was out of everyone's control, but that event, which ultimately led to at least one war, and in certain people's points of view, the second war, Iraq War, was also directly related to that. But these are issues that are generally not truly supported by the far Christian right. They're generally supported by the right in general, but the Christian right, of always being against war in general, would not openly support such endeavors. That, of course, it's a very complicated issue. But and also for the financial troubles that the U.S. went through later on, 2008, with the Bush administration's bailing out of the banks, so to speak. Of course, that's greatly simplified terms, but that was not an overly overwhelming Christian or far right act on the Bush administration, which also caused further disillusionment between the far right Christians and Bush's administration. Of course, it's too recent to really put an accurate judgment on Bush's administration, and certain things will be perceived differently 50 years from now than they are just happening only a few years ago. And only time will tell that, but there definitely was a fervor for the Bush administration on the behalf of the Christian right in the beginning, and there was certainly a deep cooling between Bush and those supporters by the end of his second term. Thank you for watching my presentation. Have a good night.